My wife demanded a court order to open my safe deposit box. Thought I was hiding millions. I handed her the key without a word. What she found wasn't treasure. Her lawyer's hand started shaking. He slammed it shut. Don't touch anything. She just unlocked her own downfall. My name is Grant Armstrong. I'm 45 years old, and I used to think I knew what marriage meant. Turns out, I was just another target. The morning Diana walked into First National Bank waving that court order like a winning lottery ticket, I was already sitting in the lobby. Leather chair, Wall Street Journal folded in my lap, coffee cooling in a paper cup. I wasn't hiding. I just wanted to see her face when she thought she'd finally won. She came through those glass doors like a hurricane in heels. Her lawyer, Russell Turner, trailed behind her, briefcase swinging, that oily smirk plastered across his face. The kind of guy who probably practiced his closing arguments in the mirror. Diana spotted me immediately. Her eyes narrowed, but her lips curved into something that might have been a smile if it wasn't so cold. She walked straight to the teller's desk, slapped the court order down, and spoke loud enough for everyone to hear. "We're here for the safe deposit box," Diana announced. "Court authorized access. Box 917. We need it opened immediately." The teller, a young woman with nervous hands, glanced at the paperwork, then at me. I stood slowly, folded my newspaper, and pulled the small brass key from my jacket pocket. I walked over and handed it to the bank officer without a word. Diana snatched it from his hand before he could even finish nodding. She turned to me, and for just a second, our eyes met. "It's all mine now, Grant," she said, her voice dripping with triumph. "Everything your father left you. Every penny you've been hiding." I didn't react, didn't flinch, just looked at her with the kind of calm you don't earn overnight. You build it, piece by piece, while watching someone you once loved turn into a stranger. "Enjoy," I said simply, like I was offering her the last cookie. She spun on her heel and marched toward the vault entrance. Russell followed, already calculating billable hours in his head. The bank officer led them through the heavy steel door, and it closed behind them with a hollow thud. I sat back down, picked up my coffee. It was cold, but I drank it anyway. I already knew what was in that box. What Diana didn't know could fill a library. But what was in that box? That was just the table of contents. A few minutes passed. Then I heard it. The metallic scrape of the drawer sliding open. Silence. Then not silence. Russell's voice cut through the quiet, sharp and panicked. "Don't touch anything." A pause. Then louder, almost frantic. I said, "Do not touch anything." People in the lobby turned their heads. The bank officer emerged first, his face drained of color. He walked straight to the manager's desk and picked up the phone. Not the police. Not yet. Internal escalation. Russell stumbled out next, gripping his briefcase like it was a life preserver. His tie was crooked. Sweat bloomed through his shirt. That smug confidence he'd walked in with, gone, replaced by something I'd been waiting a long time to see. Fear. Diana came out last. No swagger. No gloating. Just a pale face and wide eyes. She walked past me without looking, her lips moving in a whisper I couldn't quite hear. But I knew what she was thinking. What the hell did I just open? I didn't answer. Didn't need to. Because the box wasn't hiding treasure. It was hiding truth. And truth, once open, doesn't go back in. I took another sip of cold coffee and waited. The real show was just beginning. 2 years ago, my father died on a Tuesday. No dramatic deathbed scene. No last-minute confessions. Just a quiet morning where his heart decided it had done enough. He was 67, sitting in his favorite chair with a book in his lap. And when I found him, he looked almost peaceful. The funeral was small. A handful of old colleagues from his construction business, a few neighbors, and a eulogy I wrote without exaggeration. Harold Armstrong believed in building things that lasted. Houses, bridges, trust funds that could weather any storm. He kept his wealth boring on paper. Real estate trusts, corporate shells with names like Greystone Holdings and Summit Ridge, LLC. But if you knew where to look, really look, you'd find offshore accounts from the 80s and bearer bond from when that still meant something. He never explained it all to me directly. Just left behind a locked spreadsheet and a handwritten note tucked inside his desk drawer. "Only open this if they come for you," it said. I didn't touch it. Not right away. Diana didn't care at first. Didn't even ask about the estate. She kissed me at the funeral, held my hand during the reception, and went back to scrolling through her phone like nothing had changed. For a few weeks, life just continued. I handled probate. The lawyers handled paperwork. Diana handled her Pinterest boards. But then the whispers started. A distant cousin, drunk at the wake, mumbled something about accounts in the Cayman Islands. One of Dad's old business partners sent a condolence card that accidentally mentioned the Indonesian portfolio. And the real trigger? A trust officer from a firm in Bermuda called our house phone while I was at work. Diana answered. She listened to that voicemail 3 times. I know because I checked the call log later. From that moment, everything shifted. Suddenly she was interested. Curious. Concerned. She called it. How much did your father leave you? Diana asked one night over dinner, her tone casual but her eyes sharp. Everything's in trust. I told her. Structured payouts. I'm not touching it directly. Her smile tightened. That seems complicated. It's supposed to be. She didn't like that answer. The questions kept coming. At first, they were subtle. Then they weren't. I'd come home and find my office drawers slightly open. Papers shuffled. My laptop moved from where I left it. She wasn't good at hiding it. Not yet. Then she got better. Started checking my cloud backups. Try to guess my passwords. I found a sticky note in her handwriting that said Grant 1234 wedged under her keyboard. She'd been testing combinations. One evening, I walked in on her with her laptop open, scanning through PDF files she'd pulled from my backup drive. Estate documents, trust agreements, asset listings, planning a vacation. I asked from the doorway. Diana slammed the laptop shut, her face flushing. You don't trust me, she snapped. Trust isn't required for inheritance. I replied calmly. Patience is. She hated that answer. Hated it enough that she stopped sleeping in our bedroom that same night. Moved her things into the guest room without a word. And that's when I knew. This wasn't about love anymore. It wasn't even about us. It was about access, control, money. My father's note echoed in my head. If they come for you, they were coming, and I needed to be ready. So I unlocked that spreadsheet, read every line, studied every clause, and I started building something my father would have been proud of. Not a defense, a trap, one she'd walk into with her eyes wide open, thinking she'd finally outsmarted me. And when it closed around her, she'd realize too late that I'd been waiting all along. The first real fault in Diana's mask came during Thanksgiving dinner at my mother's house. Not a break in her facade, a slip. The kind of mistake you make when you think everyone around you is too distracted to notice. My mother, Linda, had gone all out. Turkey, stuffing, 3 kinds of pie, the whole Norman Rockwell spread. Diana sat across from me, playing the dutiful wife, smiling at the right moments, laughing at my uncle's bad jokes. Our son Logan, for years old, sat in his booster seat between us, picking at mashed potatoes with his fingers. Everything seemed normal until Logan looked up at Diana and said, loud enough for the whole table to hear, Mommy, when is Garrett coming over again? He said he'd bring me another toy truck. The table went silent. Forks froze midair. My mother's smile faltered. Diana's face went white, then flushed red. Logan, sweetie, Diana said quickly, forcing a laugh. You mean Gary, from the daycare. He's one of the teachers. But Logan shook his head, confused. No, Mommy. Garrett, the one who took us to the park. You said he's our friend. I didn't react. Didn't say a word. Just took a sip of water and watched Diana scramble. He's just a friend from the gym, she said, looking around the table with a brittle smile. Logan gets confused sometimes. My mother glanced at me, concern flickering in her eyes. I gave her a slight nod. Not now. Later. Dinner continued, but the air had shifted. After dessert, while Diana was in the bathroom, my mother pulled me aside in the kitchen. Grant, she said quietly, drying her hands on a dish towel. Who's Garrett? A problem I'm handling, I replied. She studied my face, the way only a mother can. Are you all right? I will be. She didn't press, just squeezed my shoulder and went back to wrapping leftovers. But I could see it in her eyes. She knew something was wrong. She just didn't know how deep it went. That night, after we got home and Logan was asleep, I sat in my office and opened a file I've been building for weeks. Photos, timestamps, license plate numbers. I'd hired a private investigator 3 months earlier, right after I found Diana's second phone hidden in her gym bag. The kind of phone you only need if you're hiding something. The investigator's name was Cole Braddock. Former cop, now freelance. He didn't ask questions, didn't judge, just delivered facts. And the facts were damning. Diana had been seeing Garrett Price for over a year. Meetings at coffee shops, long lunches at hotels downtown, afternoon trips to his apartment while Logan was at daycare. Garrett was 42, worked in commercial real estate, and had a wife and 2 teenage kids at home. Diana knew. She didn't care. But the worst part, the part that made my blood run cold, was the recording Cole had sent me 2 weeks ago. Audio from a directional microphone, captured while Diana and Garrett sat in his car outside a grocery store. Diana's voice, clear as day. He's careful with everything. Passwords, accounts, all of it. But he's not careful with Logan. If I play this right, the kid's my insurance policy. Courts always side with the mother. Garrett laughed. And if he fights, then I'll make sure everyone knows what kind of father he really is, Diana replied. Angry, controlling, maybe even dangerous. I've got people who'll back me up. I'd listened to that recording a dozen times. Each time, it felt like swallowing broken glass. Not because it hurt, because it clarified everything. She wasn't just cheating. She was planning, calculating, using our son as leverage. That's when I stopped feeling sorry for myself and started feeling something else. Not anger. Anger is loud, sloppy, reactive. What I felt was colder, more deliberate. I opened my father's encrypted files. Read every line of his fail-safe plan. The one he'd built in case someone ever tried to take what wasn't theirs. And I started adding my own pieces to the puzzle. Diana thought she was 3 steps ahead. But she didn't know I'd been watching her for months. Didn't know about Cole. Didn't know about the recordings, the photos, the paper trail I was building brick by brick. She thought she was hunting a fortune. What she didn't realize was that she'd already stepped into the trap. And when it closed, there'd be no way out. 3 months after Thanksgiving, I made the hardest decision of my life. I took Logan to a private lab across town and had them run a paternity test. Not because I wanted to, because I needed to know the truth. The waiting was brutal. 2 weeks of pretending everything was normal while my mind spun through every possibility. But when the results came back, sealed in a plain manila envelope, I sat in my car for 20 minutes before I could open it. The paper inside was clinical, cold, definitive. Probability of paternity, 0%. Logan wasn't mine. Biologically, at least. And the timeline matched. 4 years ago, right around when Logan would have been conceived, Diana had gone on a week-long girls' trip to Scottsdale. I remembered because I'd stayed home, working overtime on a project. She came back tan, relaxed, and 2 months later, told me she was pregnant. I never questioned it. Why would I? We were married. We were trying. And when Logan was born, I held him in the hospital and felt like my life had finally clicked into place. Now, sitting in my car with that paper in my hands, I felt something break inside me. Not my love for Logan. That was ironclad. But whatever last thread of loyalty, I had a Diana snap clean. She'd lied about everything. And she'd used my son, used Logan, as a weapon before he was even born. I drove home in silence. Diana was in the living room, scrolling through her phone. She barely looked up when I walked in. How was work? She asked absently. Fine, I said. I went upstairs, locked the office door, and called Walter Gibson, the attorney I'd been consulting for months. He was old school, mid-50s, gray hair, no nonsense. The kind of lawyer who didn't care about drama, just facts. I've got the paternity results, I told him. And Walter's voice was steady. Not mine. Silence on the other end. Then, that changes everything, Grant. If you're not the biological father, her leverage in court just evaporated. Custody, alimony, child support, it all shifts. I don't care about that, I said. Logan is my son. Biology doesn't change that. I understand, Walter replied. But this is evidence of fraud. She deceived you. That activates the prenup clause. The prenup, clause 14b. The one Diana had signed 3 years ago without reading, laughing it off as paranoia. It stated clearly, in the event of fraud, deception, or manipulation through legal channels, all marital assets revert to the non-offending party. No split, no negotiation. Everything goes to the person who didn't lie. I thought it was overkill when my father insisted I include it. Now it felt like prophecy. Keep the test results sealed, Walter advised. Don't tell her you know. Not yet. Let her file. Let her make her case. Then we'll bury her with the truth. I hung up and sat in the dark for a long time. Downstairs, I could hear Diana laughing at something on TV. Probably texting Garrett. Probably planning her next move. She had no idea the ground had just shifted under her feet. And when she finally realized it, when she stood in that bank vault and saw what I'd been building, it would already be too late. Because I wasn't just fighting for money or pride. I was fighting for Logan. For the truth. And I'd learned from the best. My father taught me that the strongest structures aren't built in haste. They're built in silence, one piece at a time, until they're unshakable. Diana thought she was dismantling my life, but all she was really doing was giving me the blueprints for hers. 6 months after I found the paternity results, Diana filed for divorce. Her attorney, Russell Turner, came out swinging. They requested emergency hearings, demanded full financial disclosure, and asked the court to compel me to open every account, every vault, every safe deposit box I had access to. The courtroom was sterile. Fluorescent lights, cheap wood paneling, an air that smelled like old coffee and anxiety. Diana sat at the plaintiff's table with Russell, dressed in a navy suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. She looked confident, victorious even, like she'd already won. I sat with Walter Gibson at the defense table. He was calm, flipping through documents with the patience of a man who'd done this 1,000 times. Russell stood first, his voice booming. Your Honor, we have reason to believe the respondent has concealed marital assets in various storage facilities and safe deposit boxes. We're requesting court-ordered access to any and all such containers, with or without Mr. Armstrong's cooperation. He paused for effect, like he was delivering the closing argument in a murder trial. We believe significant inheritance funds have been deliberately hidden to deprive my client of her lawful share. The judge, a woman in her early 60s with sharp eyes and no patience for theatrics, looked over her glasses at Russell. And what evidence do you have of this concealment? Russell shuffled papers. We have testimony from Mrs. Armstrong regarding conversations about offshore accounts at trust funds. We have evidence of Mr. Armstrong's father's substantial estate. And we have reason to believe. Reason to believe isn't evidence, Mr. Turner. The judge interrupted. Russell's jaw tightened. We're requesting discovery, Your Honor. Access to financial records will provide the evidence we need. The judge turned to Walter. Mr. Gibson. Walter stood slowly, like a man who had all the time in the world. No objection, Your Honor. The courtroom went silent. Diana's head snapped toward Russell, confusion flickering across her face. Russell himself blinked, clearly not expecting that response. You're not disputing the request? The judge asked. We're not disputing anything, Walter said calmly. In fact, we're prepared to assist. My client has nothing to hide. That should have been Diana's first warning. But I could see her face. She thought she'd won. Thought Walter had just handed her the keys to the kingdom. The judge signed the order. Access granted to all storage facilities and safe deposit boxes registered under the respondent's name. The petitioner and her counsel will be notified of logistics. As we stood to leave, I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out a small envelope. I walked over to Russell and handed it to him. Inside was a key, a folded slip of paper with the bank name and vault number, and my signature authorizing access. Russell stared at it like I'd just handed him a winning lottery ticket. Diana leaned over his shoulder, her lips curling into a smirk. That's it, she whispered, just loud enough for me to hear. That's where you've been hiding it. I didn't answer, just looked at her with the same calm I'd been building for months. Russell turned to me, his confidence flooding back. We'll have this open by Monday, he said. Take your time, I replied. Just make sure you bring gloves. He laughed, actually laughed, like I made a joke. Diana rolled her eyes and turned away, heels clicking on the tile floor as she walked toward the exit. Walter and I left through a side door. Once we were outside, he glanced at me. You're sure about this? He asked. Positive. He nodded. Then let's see how this plays out. I got in my car and sat there for a moment, watching Diana and Russell walk across the parking lot. She was talking animatedly, gesturing with her hands, probably already spending money in her head, already planning what she'd do with half of everything. But she didn't know what was in that box. Didn't know I'd spend the last year filling it with something far more valuable than money. Evidence. Documentation. Truth. And when she opened it, when she saw what I'd been building, the look on her face would be worth every sleepless night I'd spent getting here. Monday morning. First National Bank. 10:30. I arrived early, just like before, and sat in the same leather chair in the lobby with a newspaper I wasn't reading. I was waiting, watching. Diana arrived 15 minutes later with Russell and another woman I didn't recognize. She looked official, probably a forensic accountant or paralegal. Diana was dressed for victory again. Designer handbag, sunglasses pushed up on her head, that same smug expression I'd been watching for months. She saw me and stopped mid-stride. For just a second, something flickered in her eyes. Doubt maybe, or suspicion. But Russell was already moving toward the teller desk, court order in hand, and Diana followed. "We're here to access safe deposit box 917, Russell announced. "Court authorized." The bank officer, the same nervous young woman from last time, nodded and led them toward the vault. I didn't follow. I just sat there, turning pages I wasn't reading, and waited for the inevitable. It didn't take long, maybe 4 minutes. Then I heard it, a metallic scrape, the sound of the drawer sliding open. Then silence, long, heavy silence. Then Russell's voice, sharp and rising in pitch. "Wait, stop, don't touch anything." The woman with them said something I couldn't make out. Then Russell again, louder. I said, "Do not touch anything in there." People in the lobby turned. The tellers looked up from their screens. I folded my newspaper and set it down. The bank officer came out first, face pale, walking quickly to the manager's desk. She picked up the phone and spoke in urgent, hushed tones. Russell stumbled out next, gripping his briefcase like a lifeline. His face was flushed, his tie loosened. That cocky confidence from the courtroom, gone, replaced by something close to panic. Diana came out last. She wasn't walking the same way she'd walked in. No swagger, no triumph, just slow, measured steps, like she was trying not to trip. Her face was blank, empty. She walked past me without making eye contact. I stood. "Find what you were looking for?" I asked quietly. She stopped, turned, stared at me with something I'd never seen in her eyes before. Not anger, not hatred, fear. "What did you do?" she whispered. "I documented," I said simply. Russell was beside her now, pulling her toward the exit. "We need to leave. Now." But Diana didn't move. She was frozen, staring at me like I was a stranger. "There are pictures," she said, her voice breaking. "Videos. Bank records. How did you?" "You thought I didn't notice," I said, my voice calm. "You thought I was too busy, too trusting, too stupid to see what was happening right in front of me. But I saw everything, Diana. Every lie, every meeting, every dollar you thought you hid. This is entrapment." Russell snapped, stepping between us. "This won't hold up." "It's documentation," I replied. "And it's all legal. Time-stamped, notarized, admissible." Diana's face went from pale to ashen. "The fund," she whispered. "You know about the fund?" I nodded. "The children's cancer fund my father started. The one you stole $120,000 from." "Yeah, I know about that too." Her knees seemed to buckle slightly. Russell grabbed her arm to steady her. "There's more in that box," I continued. "Medical records showing you lied about having cancer to collect donations. Receipts showing you spent $85,000 on plastic surgery for Garrett. Bank transfers to your sister Brenda under fake names. And my personal favorite, a video of you telling Garrett that Logan is your insurance policy." "You're lying," she said, but her voice had no strength. "I have timestamps, Diana. GPS data, phone records, and a recording of you saying, and I quote, 'I married him for the money. I'll leave once I know where it's all buried.'" She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. Nothing came out. Russell pulled her toward the door. "Don't say another word," he hissed. But before they left, I called out, "Oh, and Diana, there's one more thing in that box." She stopped, didn't turn around, but I knew she was listening. "Paternity test results," I said, "for Logan." Her shoulders stiffened. Russell's head snapped toward me. 0%, I continued. "He's not mine." "Which means you lied about that too. And according to Clause 14B of our prenuptial agreement, fraud voids your claim to any marital assets. You get nothing." Diana turned slowly. Her face was no longer pale. It was red, blotchy, tears streaming down her cheeks. Not tears of sadness. Tears of rage. Of humiliation. "You bastard," she spat. "No," I said calmly. "Just prepared." Russell dragged her out. The glass doors swung shut behind them, and the lobby fell silent. I turned to Walter, who'd been standing quietly near the entrance the whole time. That went well, he said dryly. Better than expected, I agreed. I walked out into the sunlight, got in my car, and drove home. And for the first time in 2 years, I felt like I could breathe. The day after the vault incident, I received a call from Edgar Townsend. He was 61, former federal prosecutor, now a private consultant specializing in white-collar crime and corporate fraud. I'd retained him 6 months earlier, quietly paying his fees through one of my father's old trust accounts that Diana didn't know existed. Grant, his voice was measured, professional. I've reviewed the materials from the safe deposit box. We need to meet. We met at his office downtown. No receptionist, no waiting room. Just a private suite with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Edgar sat behind a mahogany desk, reading glasses perched on his nose, a thick folder open in front of him. Your father was a very careful man, Edgar said, tapping the folder. Did you know about the contingency clause in his will? The one about contested inheritance? I asked. Not just contested, Edgar corrected. Fraudulent attempts to claim it. Your father built a failsafe into his estate structure 20 years ago. If anyone, spouse, business partner, family member, attempted to claim his assets through deception or fraud within 10 years of his death, everything would automatically transfer to a charitable foundation. Every penny. I leaned forward. I didn't know that. Most people don't read the fine print, Edgar replied. But your father was explicit. He saw too many estates torn apart by greed. So he created an insurance policy. The moment Diana filed for divorce claiming hidden assets, the moment she tried to access that vault under false pretenses, she triggered the clause. What does that mean? It means even if she somehow got past the prenup, even if a judge ruled in her favor, there'd be nothing left to claim. Your father's entire estate, every trust, every offshore account, every property, would dissolve in the foundation within 30 days. I sat back, processing. My father had built a trap so complete, so airtight, that Diana had been walking toward her own destruction from the moment she started digging. But there's more, Edgar continued. He pulled out another document. The IRS complaint. My stomach tightened. What about it? We traced it back to an anonymous tip filed 8 months ago. Someone claimed you were hiding offshore income and evading taxes. It cost you $75,000 in legal fees and a full audit that found nothing wrong. Diana, I said quietly. Almost certainly, Edgar confirmed. The tip was filed from an IP address that matches your home network. We have timestamps, and the language in the complaint matches phrases Diana used in her recorded conversations. Can we prove it? We can prove enough, Edgar said. Filing a false IRS complaint is a federal crime. Couple that with the charity fraud, the fake cancer diagnosis, the embezzlement from the children's fund. Diana isn't just looking at a divorce anymore. She's looking at criminal charges. I stood, walked to the window, and stared out at the skyline. Part of me felt vindicated. Another part just felt tired. What happens now? I asked. Now we present everything to the district attorney's office, Edgar said. The fraud against the charity alone is enough for multiple felony counts. Add in the IRS complaint, the false medical claims for financial gain, and we have a solid case. She'll likely be charged within the month. And Logan. Edgar's expression softened. The court will grant you full custody. Given the paternity results and her criminal exposure, no judge will side with her. You'll have to decide whether you want to pursue adoption proceedings, but legally, you'll be Logan's primary guardian. I nodded slowly. Do it. File everything. Edgar closed the folder. Your father would be proud, Grant. He built all of this to protect you. And you used it exactly as he intended. I left his office and drove home in silence. When I walked through the door, Logan was sitting on the living room floor, building a tower out of blocks. He looked up and grinned. Daddy, look how tall. I knelt beside him, helped him place another block on top. That's really tall, buddy. Can we go to the park? He asked. Yeah, I said. We can go to the park. Because no matter what happened with Diana, no matter what came next, Logan was mine. Not because of biology, because of choice. And I'd spend the rest of my life making sure he knew that. 3 weeks after the vault opened, Diana made her last desperate move. I should have seen it coming, but even I underestimated how far she'd go. It was a Saturday afternoon. I'd taken Logan to Riverside Park, one of those sprawling green spaces with playgrounds, bike paths, and families everywhere. Logan was on the swings, laughing every time I pushed him higher. That's when Garrett Price showed up. He walked across the grass like he belonged there, hands in his pockets, sunglasses on. He stopped about 20 feet away, watching us. I saw him immediately, recognized him from the surveillance photos Cole had taken months ago. Tall, early 40s, the kind of guy who probably thought he was intimidating. I stopped pushing Logan's swing and turned to face him. "Can I help you?" I called out. Garrett smiled, pulling off his sunglasses. "You must be Grant, and you must be the guy sleeping with my wife." Logan's swing slowed. He looked between us, confused. I kept my voice calm, steady. I wasn't going to give Garrett what he wanted. "I'm just here to talk," Garrett said, walking closer. "Man to man. Then talk." He stopped about 10 feet away, close enough to be confrontational, far enough to claim innocence if someone was watching. And someone was. I spotted Diana's car parked across the street. She was sitting in the driver's seat, phone pointed at us. Recording. This wasn't a conversation. It was a setup. "Diana told me about the vault," Garrett said. "Pretty messed up, man. Setting her up like that." "Setting her up would imply I planted evidence," I replied. "I didn't plan anything. I just documented what she did." "You're ruining her life." "She ruined her own life." I just stopped pretending I didn't notice. Garrett took a step closer. His jaw was tight, his hands clenched. He was trying to provoke me, wanted me to swing first, get on camera, prove I was dangerous, unstable, unfit to have custody of Logan. "You think you're so smart," Garrett said, his voice rising, "hiding behind lawyers and legal tricks. But you're just a coward." I didn't move, didn't react, just looked at him with the same calm I'd been building for 2 years. "If you're trying to bait me into hitting you," I said quietly, "it's not going to work." Garrett's face flushed. He stepped closer, now within arm's reach. "What kind of man lets another guy take his wife and doesn't even fight back?" "The kind who doesn't need violence to win," I replied. Logan had stopped swinging completely now. He was watching, wide-eyed. I could see the fear starting to creep into his expression. That decided it. "Logan," I said calmly, not taking my eyes off Garrett, "go to the bench over there and wait for me." Logan didn't move. His lip trembled. "It's okay, buddy," I said gently. "Go ahead. I'll be right there." Logan climbed off the swing and walked slowly to the bench, looking back every few steps. Once he was far enough away, I turned my full attention to Garrett. "Here's what's going to happen," I said quietly. "You're going to walk away. You're going to get in your car, drive home, and never come near me or my son again. Because if you don't, I'll make sure every text message, every photo, every hotel receipt gets submitted as evidence in Diana's criminal trial. And when they charge her with fraud, conspiracy, and embezzlement, they'll start looking at you too. Aiding and abetting. Conspiracy to commit fraud. You think your wife and kids will appreciate that?" Garrett's face went from red to pale in seconds. "That's what I thought," I said. "Now leave." He stood there for a moment, frozen, then turned and walked away. Across the grass, into his car. He didn't look back. I walked over to Logan, sat beside him on the bench. He looked up at me with those big, worried eyes. "Who was that, Daddy?" "Nobody important," I said. "Just someone who made a bad choice." "Are you okay?" I pulled him into a hug. "I'm fine, buddy. I'm always fine." We stayed at the park for another hour. Played on the slides, threw a football, got ice cream from the truck near the entrance. And the whole time, I knew Diana was somewhere watching, realizing that her last play had failed. Because I wasn't the man she thought I was. I wasn't weak. I wasn't careless. And I damn sure wasn't going to let her destroy what mattered most. The charges came down 4 weeks after the vault opened. Federal fraud. Theft from a charitable organization. Filing false IRS complaints. Conspiracy to commit wire fraud. Diana was arrested on a Tuesday morning at her sister Brenda's house, where she'd been staying since I changed the locks on her home. The local news picked it up immediately. Former construction executive's wife charged in charity fraud scheme. They didn't use her name in the headline, but everyone knew. The story detailed how she'd stolen over $120,000 from a children's cancer fund, faked a cancer diagnosis to collect donations, and filed false federal complaints against her husband. My phone exploded with calls. Friends I hadn't spoken to in years. Colleagues from work. Even my Uncle Bill, who never called anyone, left a voicemail saying, always knew something was off about her. But the call that mattered came from Diana's parents. Richard and Patricia Fletcher. I've met them maybe a dozen times over the years. They'd always been cold toward me, like I wasn't quite good enough for their daughter. Now Richard was on the phone, his voice sharp and angry. "Grant, we need to talk about Diana's legal fees," he said without preamble. "What about them?" I asked. "She needs a proper defense. We're asking you to contribute. It's the right thing to do." I was silent for a moment, processing the audacity. "You want me to help pay for her defense? After everything she did? She's still Logan's mother." Patricia's voice cut in on the other line. She must have been listening. "You owe it to him to make sure she has adequate representation. Logan isn't her biological son," I said flatly. "The paternity test proved that. She lied about that too." Silence on the other end. Then Richard again, his voice harder. "This is your fault, Grant. You humiliated her, destroyed her reputation. You set her up. I documented her crimes. I corrected. There's a difference. We're asking you to do the right thing," Patricia said, her voice quivering. "Help her. For Logan's sake." "No," I said simply. "Then we'll sue you," Richard threatened. "For defamation. For emotional distress. For what?" I interrupted. "Everything in that vault was true. Every document verified. Every recording authenticated. You want to sue me for telling the truth? Good luck finding a lawyer stupid enough to take that case. You've destroyed our family," Patricia said, her voice breaking. "Our reputation in this community is ruined because of you." "Your reputation is ruined because your daughter is a criminal," I replied, "and you raised her to think she could get away with it. That's not my fault. That's yours." I hung up, blocked both numbers, and for the first time in weeks, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. The preliminary hearing happened 2 weeks later. Diana sat at the defense table with a public defender, her face hollow, her hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. She looked smaller somehow, diminished. The prosecutor laid out the case methodically. Bank records showing transfers from a charity fund to Diana's personal accounts. Medical records proving she never had cancer. Recordings of her planning to frame me. The false IRS complaint traced back to our home computer. The jury of her peers would hear everything. Diana's lawyer tried to argue entrapment, tried to claim I'd manipulated evidence. But the judge shut him down quickly. Mr. Armstrong didn't create these documents. He simply preserved them. Motion denied. As I left the courthouse, a reporter approached me with a microphone. "Mr. Armstrong, do you have any comment on your wife's charges?" "She's not my wife anymore," I said, "and I have nothing to add. The evidence speaks for itself." That evening, I picked Logan up from my mother's house. He ran to me with a drawing he'd made. A house, a stick figure man, and a smaller stick figure labeled me and Daddy. "That's us," he said proudly. "That's perfect, buddy," I said, kneeling down to his level. "You know I love you, right?" "I know," Logan said, hugging me. "I love you too, Daddy." And in that moment, I knew I'd made the right choices. Every single one. 8 months after the trial began, Diana accepted a plea deal. 5 years in federal prison for fraud and theft. 3 years probation after release. Full restitution to the charity fund. And she signed away all parental rights to Logan without contest. The judge had made it clear during sentencing. "Mrs. Armstrong, you didn't just steal money. You stole from sick children. You manipulated the legal system. You lied to your husband about the paternity of a child to secure financial gain. This court finds your actions reprehensible." Diana stood there, hands cuffed, and said nothing. No apology. No remorse. Just empty silence. They led her away, and I never saw her again. The custody hearing happened a week later. Walter Gibson presented the paternity results, the evidence of Diana's manipulation, and my petition for formal adoption. "Your Honor," Walter said, "Mr. Armstrong has been Logan's father in every meaningful way since birth. He's provided care, stability, and love. The biological connection doesn't exist, but the parental bond absolutely does. We're asking the court to formalize what's already true, that Grant Armstrong is Logan's father, legally and permanently." The judge reviewed the documents, then looked at me. "Mr. Armstrong, you understand that adoption is permanent? You'll have all legal rights and responsibilities for this child." "I understand, Your Honor," I said. "Logan is my son. He always has been." She signed the papers. "Adoption granted. Congratulations, Mr. Armstrong." I walked out of that courthouse with legal documents that said what my heart had known for 4 years. Logan was mine, not because of biology, because of choice, because of love. Life settled into a new rhythm after that. Logan started kindergarten, made friends, played soccer on weekends. He asked about Diana once, early on. "Where's Mommy?" She had to go away for a while. I told him gently, "But you've got me, and Grandma Linda, and Uncle Bill. We're your family." He thought about that for a moment, then nodded. "Okay. Kids are resilient in ways adults forget." I sold the house. Too many bad memories. Bought a smaller place closer to my mother, with a backyard big enough for Logan to run around in. We got a dog, a golden retriever Logan named Biscuit. We built a tree house together one summer, with Logan handing me nails and asking 1,000 questions about why we needed brackets and whether birds would live in it too. My father's estate eventually settled. The charitable foundation he'd created received a substantial endowment. The Children's Cancer Fund was fully reimbursed with interest, and the remainder went into a trust for Logan's education and future. I started dating again after a year. Nothing serious at first, just coffee dates and getting to know people without the weight of betrayal hanging over me. Eventually, I met someone, a teacher named Rachel. Kind, patient, good with Logan. We took things slow, no rushing. No assumptions. On Logan's 7th birthday, we had a party in the backyard. Friend from school, my mother, Uncle Bill, even Walter Gibson stopped by with a present. Logan ran around with his friends, covered in cake frosting and grass stains, laughing so hard he could barely breathe. Rachel sat beside me on the porch steps, watching the chaos. "You've done a good job with him," she said. "He makes it easy," I replied. "Still," she said, squeezing my hand, "he's lucky to have you." I watched Logan chase Biscuit across the yard, both of them tumbling into a pile of leaves. And I realized something. I'd spent 2 years fighting for justice, for truth, for vindication. But what I'd really been fighting for was this. This moment, this life, this kid who called me dad not because he had to, but because that's who I was. Diana had tried to take everything from me. Instead, she'd given me clarity, shown me what mattered and what didn't. And in the end, I didn't just survive what she did. I won. Not in the way she would have understood. Not with money or revenge or public humiliation. I won because I got to keep being Logan's father. Because I got to build a life based on truth instead of lies. Because I learned that the strongest foundation isn't built on what you inherit, but on what you choose to protect. And that was worth more than any vault, any account, any inheritance could ever be.